I'd like to call this January 16th meeting to order. First item on the agenda is we need to, we're meeting remotely as well, so we'd like to take a roll call vote before we get going. Everybody present. Martha?
Here.
Jason?
Here.
Diane?
Here.
Chris?
Here.
And Ken, here. Okay. First item on the agenda is review and approve minutes. I don't think we all had a chance to review the minutes, so we'll hold those off till next meeting. Next item on the agenda is to sign bills. Do we have any bills?
I do have one bill for Ecotech for the peer review of 170 Hartford Turnpike for $1,000, $1,028.22.
Do we need to vote on that or just
I
sign
think you
it?
just get to sign it.
Okay.
I need another pen.
I'll use that one.
I just initial this. Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you.
Okay, on to meetings and hearing. The first, should I announce the continued meetings or? the
Yeah, let's
work
go ahead and knock
session?
those out.
All right, so there's a few meetings that have been continued to next month. First one is the meeting at 195 Gulf Street. The second one is at 170 Hartford Turnpike. The next one is in ANRAD at 28 and 34 Cherry and 45, 47, and 63 Memorial Drive. Okay, and then
36.
And then one more is the 65 Prospect Street is continued.
18 Quill Hollow.
And 18 Quail Hollow. Continued. Okay, is that continued? No. Okay. So, first item on the agenda is a continued public hearing regarding a notice of intent filed by Capstone Realty Trust, 69 Park Ave, Worcester, for the construction of a single-family home driveway at 36 Sewell Street, Lot 1. Is there anybody here for that?
I haven't heard anything from him, so I
Okay.
guess we'll continue later into the evening.
Okay. We'll hold that till the end. Next item on the agenda is a continued public hearing for the notice of intent filed by Melitros Chachione at 115 Northeast Cutoff Realty Trust at 1 West Boylston Street, Worcester, for the construction of 2 commercial buildings with parking, driveways, and commercial loading areas, as well as 2 stormwater BMPs at 369 Holden Street.
Haven't heard anything from them either, but
Okay.
I'm not seeing the applicant.
Moving right along. We have an RDA for new public meeting regarding the request of a determination of applicability filed by New England Power Company, 170 Data Drive, Waltham, Mass., for the installation of a flyover switch at 2 locations at 316 Boston Turnpike.
This applicant will be tuning in remotely. Let me pull up their slide deck. Jason, are you here?
I am,
Sorry.
yep.
Yes, okay, awesome. Okey doke, let me know what page you'd like me to be on.
Okay. Yeah, I think, can I present from my screen actually?
Yeah.
See if that works. Someone just throw the map up here.
Stop presenting.
Chrome tab.
There's like a little square with an up arrow in it.
Okay. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, and if I drag this over, you can see that? Okay, good. All right, I am ready when you guys are.
All right, go ahead.
All right, so my name is Jason Tome. I'm with TRC Companies. We're an environmental consulting firm. I'm speaking on behalf of NEP, New England Power Company. And what NEP is looking to do is they're looking to install 2 flyover switch structures, is what they're called. And those are going to go right here in the red, 135A, 134A. And the reason that they're installing these structures is because it allows NEP to control the flow of electricity along the electrical circuits during future operation and maintenance activities. And the reason that we had to submit this RDA is because if you can see here, this is the 200-foot riverfront area buffer. So basically that just means it's within 200 feet from a stream. So both of these flyover switch structures are within that 200-foot buffer. And secondly, you can see that there's 100-foot wetland buffers, and these these won't be permanently impacted. They're just there'd be temporary impacts, mostly for like access getting to these flyover switch structures. So the temporary impact to the 100-foot buffer and the permanent impact to the 200-foot buffer is the reason NEP had to do this RDA. So methodology for installing these flyover switch structures is basically all they have to do is make a 5-foot diameter hole and make that go 13 feet down into the ground. And then they can put the flyover switch structure in, or they're going to put 2 in, but here, I'll just show you a quick example of what that looks like. So in the foreground on the right-hand side here, that's basically all it is. It's just like a transmission hole. It looks very similar to that. So they're just, when they dig a hole that deep in that big ground, they're able to put that pole in there. And so that 5-foot diameter hole is about 20 square feet of impact. And since we're doing 2 of them, it's going to be a total of 40 square feet of impact. And that's all that they're looking to impact, is just that 40 square feet. Everything else is going to be temporary impacts. And also they're going to use the EG 303NE, which is National Grid's environmental guidance manual, to ensure that there's no impacts during construction to any of these natural resources. And there'll be an environmental inspector that periodically comes and makes sure they're following everything in the manual. So since we're only going to be disturbing 40 square feet of impact, and you can see it's also like quite a ways from the streams. It's like on the outside, like close to the outside of the buffer, and it's outside of the actual wetland 100-foot buffer. Since it's just minimal impacts, 40 square feet, and the remaining disturbance is temporary, NEP is requesting that the Shrewsbury Conservation Commission issue a negative determination of applicability for this project.
Okay. I have a question. Are these
Sure.
located within the Rolf Ave substation area or just outside the fence, or where are they?
They're just outside the fence, yep.
So it's basically in the same vicinity of where the station is?
Yeah, it's like, yeah, very, very close.
Okay.
Yep. It's within the power line corridor too, so yeah.
Okay. Chris?
I have no questions.
Diane?
Well, yeah, are the existing poles going to be removed, or are they going to be just decommissioned?
I believe 135, 134 in the blue there, they're going to stay the same. They're not going to move. We're just going to be adding these switch structures in, and those switch structures allow NEP to control the electricity flow. So it's not an addition. It's like a different kind of thing. So they're going to, both of these are going to be there. These are currently already there, and then the flyover switch structure would be an additional thing.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
You all set? Martha?
Yes, thank you. I have a couple questions. Since you're going 13 feet down, do you need to do any soil borings ahead of time to determine whether the soil is going to support this new structure?
I am not sure about that. I don't think so. Otherwise, my supervisor would have mentioned that, I think, but I can get back to you on that.
That would be great to know. Thanks.
Okay, I'll write this down.
And then are you going to have to traverse any of the wetland in order to get to the site? And if so, what's your methodology for that?
So no, we will completely avoid all direct impacts to everything. We won't have any direct impacts to the stream, no direct impacts to the wetlands. The only thing that will be within is the 100-foot buffer of the wetland. So we'll still be in the upland. It's just will be in the 100-foot buffer of the wetland. And when we're doing construction activities within that, well, everywhere, but also within that 100-foot buffer, we're going to be following the National Grid's environmental guidance manual, which has like silt fence, and just to make sure there's no runoff or anything into any of the streams or into any of the wetlands.
Okay, thank you. I'm all set, Kitty.
Jason?
No questions.
Are there anybody in the audience have any questions? What do you think? Martha, would you be comfortable if we voted on this tonight and we got that information on the
Yes.
subject to those borings? Okay. Would somebody like to make a motion then?
I make a motion that we approve the flyover switch installation at 316 Boston Turnpike.
And issue a negative determination?
Yes, an issue of negative determination.
Okay. Okay, all those in favor, we'll do a roll call. Diane?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Martha?
Aye.
Jason?
Aye.
Myself, Ken, aye. Okay. You're all set.
Great, thank you, appreciate it.
All right, next item on the agenda is a new public meeting regarding request for determination of applicability filed by Abram Realty Trust, 197 Spring Street, Shrewsbury, for the mitigation and construction of a chicken coop and plantings at 197 Spring Street.
This was at one point also being chaired by James Tetrault, so I'm not sure with his absence that it will be presented this evening.
Okay, we'll hold it till the end. All right, we have another RDA, a new public meeting regarding requested termination of applicability filed by Mark Lambert, 25 Fairbanks Street, West Boylston, Mass., for the removal of trees at 107 Francis Ave.
Mark Lambert?
You're up.
So Francis Ave, there's a poplar tree in the back that's, it's got basal rot and stem rot in it, and she's pretty concerned with it falling down.
Do we know where it is located on the?
The back edge of the property, right along the stream. I did email over some text for her.
This right here.
Yeah, so right in the back edge of the lawn, there's like a brook that runs along the backside, or stream.
It's very hard to tell from this picture what tree.
Okay, well, I marked it out when I sent it over. I'm not sure if there's something else.
Sorry, you sent another aerial of a different home,
Okay,
and that one had a tree marked out, but when you sent this aerial, it didn't have
Okay.
the tree included.
all right. That's my apologies then.
Can you mark it out on this?
Yeah, I can get up and point to it.
Okay.
Let me see if I can load a better aerial.
It's right about here. is where the poplar is. And it's leaning, it's pretty substantially leaning against that. There's another elm tree right here too. And it's just resting in there. And it really should come out. Heading towards her house.
Right, and we understand, but the problem we have is it's very difficult to tell which one it is, so we need to know exactly which one. And again, is this one, can you show us which one it is on this?
Yeah. It's intermingled in all these other trees, but it's right in this area, right here.
Okay. All right. Chris?
How many trees are coming out? I heard poplar and I heard elm.
Elm is just getting trimmed,
Okay,
and so it's only the poplar that's coming out.
so only the poplar's coming out, not, and then trimming the
Elm.
elm, okay.
Yep.
Diane?
So it looks pretty straightforward, that there's a poplar that has rot at the bottom, and it's fallen already partway, and it's caught up on the elm tree, and that the owner is afraid that it's gonna fall and hit
Correct.
her house. It's just I can't tell from the photograph that that's the case, and I would hate to make a problem with that. I guess I would just ask in the future that you take a picture on the ground so that we can actually see it.
Sure. Yep. Not a problem.
I can't tell from looking at it. There's no seeing from the photograph.
Okay.
Martha?
Thank you. What happens to the stump?
That's gonna stay.
Okay, thank you. All set.
Jason?
No questions.
Perhaps if we vote on this tonight, prior to you cutting a tree, you could reach out to the agent, Leah, and maybe she could go out and verify it's the tree that we're voting on before you cut it.
Okay.
Would that be acceptable?
We can arrange a site
All right.
visit.
Anybody in the audience have any questions? Okay, would somebody like to make a motion?
I make a motion that we issue a negative determination for the removal of an poplar tree at 107 Francis Avenue with Aaliyah's review of the confirmed tree. Did I capture that correctly?
I think she did. Is there a second?
Yes, second.
Okay, all those in favor? Diane?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Martha?
Aye.
Jason?
Aye.
Myself, Ken? Aye. Okay, you're all set, and just when you get the notification, just reach out to Aaliyah, and
Okay.
before you schedule it, and you'll be all set.
All right. Sounds
All right.
good.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Okay. Okay, next item on the agenda is a continued public hearing regarding notice of intent files by Charles Pitcherowitz, 23 Eagle Head Terrace, Shrewsbury, for the repair, replacement, and of a pool deck and patio at 7-27 Eagle Head Terrace.
Good evening, this is Scott Jordan from Ecotech. I
Hi,
am
Scott.
representing the applicant tonight.
Okay?
Aaliyah, were you planning to put up the plan, or should I, or?
I am happy to.
Thank you. I think probably the best, the third page, sheet C-102.
C-102, okay, let me pull that up.
Thank you. Thank you. So this is Eagle Head Terrace Cove Condominiums, Eagle Head Condominiums. This is up off of North Quinsigamon Ave. It's an older condominium complex, and they actually, the shaded building, recreational building you see in the middle is actually built over what is a very short segment of a map perennial stream. And then Lake Quinsigamon is immediately to the left, to the southwest. Again, it's a short segment on the most recent quad for USGS map. So it's considered a perennial stream. In our opinion, it's more of sort of a backwater embayment of the lake. The lake kind of backs up into there, but we've conservatively flagged it as a perennial stream. We flagged it mean and high water line. Again, that gray shaded area is the recreational building that was built over the water many, many years ago. Pre-96, pre-Rivers Act. And the hatched area to the right is their existing pool, again, built pre-Rivers Act. It's actually a very simple project. The pool deck, concrete deck, is in disrepair, and they just want to replace that. 2,400 square feet to 2,400 square feet. No increase within the riverfront area. The proposal is to actually jackhammer that deck and then wheelbarrow it out over the wooden deck. You see the thick dash line. That's the pathway to a parking area where it will be put into trucks, and then it will pour the new deck. So there's no increase in impervious, no earth disturbance. Simply a replacement of an existing deck that is all slightly pitched towards the pool. There's no runoff from this project. Again, we conservatively designed this project to meet the riverfront requirements, regulations for redevelopment, and we've done that. Basically, you can't be any closer to the river. We are not. We're exact same footprint. And another requirement under redevelopment is you must improve the riverfront area. And we're proposing 10 shrub plantings along the stream. Those are shown on the next page, but we're going to pop those in where we have some openings. We have 5 bush blueberry and 5 northern arrowwood. This project did receive a DEP file number, and there were no technical comments. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions.
Okay. Chris?
Yes, I see on, looks on 103, it looks like it's going to continue to be pitched toward the pool. Obviously, the water will be pitched to the pool. Is there any excavation, any retaining walls, anything like that that's changing?
Nope, just the deck.
Okay, so what type of equipment are you going to use to remove the deck? Is it just hand tools, jackhammer, and things like that?
Jackhammer and then wheelbarrow it over that, what you see, wooden deck just to the south of the recreation building.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, they're gonna build a plywood type thing over the stairs to get to the deck, wheelbarrow it over to the parking lot where they have a staging area with trucks to haul it off site.
So no Bobcat, nothing, no small excavator?
That's
anything
not
like that?
proposed, no.
Okay. And then, yeah, other than the plantings, there's no other excavation plan then?
No,
Okay.
correct.
All right, no questions.
Diane?
No questions.
Martha?
I'm all set.
Jason?
No questions. I'm all set.
Okay, anyone in the audience? Scott, what are you putting back here? I might have missed that. When you take out the concrete.
Concrete,
You're putting concrete the same?
yeah, concrete deck, yeah, same.
Okay. All right. There are no other questions. I guess we'll close the hearing. You're all set.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
This is closed. So we have a new public hearing. Is this, which one are we on now?
That is actually for
The Green
33 to
Street?
69 Green Street.
All right.
I'm not seeing the applicants for 20 to 22 Greylock. Maybe I'm missing them on the line, though.
Are they online? Want me to, do you want to read this? So we're going to open it?
Let me see if I can see all my humans present. I do have Mitch here, so he might have to present. Mitch, are you ready?
Yep, yeah, are we doing Greylock? Sure.
Okey doke. So yes, you can actually open that
You
one.
want to open it?
Do you want to read that, Chris?
Oh, I don't know if I sure have it.
It's a new one? Very well.
I'm not sure I have it. Mm-mm. I don't think so. So I can wing it.
Oh, there it is.
Oh, you're right. It's because it barely includes the word Greylock. Notice is hereby given in accordance with the provisions of General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Town of Shrewsbury Wetlands bylaws and regulation that Rashid Sheikh, on behalf of Value Estate Trust, 24 Sherrill Drive, Shrewsbury, Mass., has filed a request to amend the order of conditions for the construction of 2 single-family homes at 20-22 Greylock Avenue, formerly 3739 Melvin Avenue and 42 Sadler Avenue.
I'm just gonna scoot these to the other side of you.
Yeah, so Scott Goddard is here on behalf of the applicants when you're ready for me.
All right, Scott, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So again, Scott Goddard, Goddard Consulting, Wetlands Consultant for Rashid. Also with me is Mitch Mislanka from my office. Rashid is traveling out of country and not able to be with us. So the reason for our joining you this evening is the project that we were before you with you several months ago on the construction of 2 single-family houses that were partially within floodplain on lots we called the Melvin Ave, Sadler, and now I think it's being referred to as 2022 Greylock, but it's kind of the confluence of 3 roads in Shrewsbury. Those, oh, yeah, look at that, beautiful. Yep, so those houses have been built and the site work is done. The grass is not stabilized yet because it was seeded late in the season. So what we are here before is when Rashid built the basements on these, well, basements, right, isn't really probably the right word, but the below first floor storage spaces / basement, whatever term we want to use for them. He built them with the use of flood vents that allow water to pass in and out, which is a deviation from the approved design. The design was before you with really like an open foundation concept that the back of the houses would be kind of open air, so for the free passage of water in and out. And so since this modification was done, it warrants, in my opinion, And that's what I told him, that it would require an amendment to the, to the permit. This was something that he got approved from the building department and got signed off as part of the building permit because it met mass code. And what my understanding was, and I wasn't a part of the process, was that the open air foundation rear was not something that was received well by the building inspector's office. So then this design was the alternative, and it's something that is consistent with mass building code. So my anticipation coming into this meeting, honestly, was that, you know, it was probably not likely to be looked at favorably with the commission, only because it was something that was a point of heavy dialogue, right? There was some strong dialogue, some strong feelings about this topic. We had many hearings on what to do about these foundations. And then DEP issued an email a few days ago, Judy Schmitz from Central Regional Office, about how there was a recent adjudicatory hearing case that the flood fence was rejected as a way of utilizing flood storage within a basement. So in other words, they identified that the flood vents were considered a constriction, and therefore any floodwaters in the basement in that case were not considered compensatory flood storage to meet the land subject to flooding calculations. So with all that kind of, in front of us, I was thinking that this request was going to be, a tough sell to your board this evening. Nevertheless, I'm here, and I actually, since then I've come into some new information that is sort of changing my mindset about this request. And that mindset is this. I talked to Bert Corey, he's the engineer from Schofield Brothers. He did an as-built, and we have now the existing conditions post-construction of all the grading and all the contours. And the way that the site was graded out appropriately was in a way that made it so that enough flood compensation for the storage has been satisfied without including the lower level elevation inside the structure as flood storage. In other words, a different way to say that is the storage of water inside the house is not needed or necessary in order for the floodplain calculations to be satisfied. So that's a very, very important distinction in this case. In other words, we don't even really need the flood vents at all to satisfy the BLSF requirements in the post-construction analysis. So that is not something that is comparable to the case that was brought before us by DEP. I didn't know about the DEP case until Judy brought it up. I did read it pretty thoroughly. And in that case, they were dependent upon the ability to store the floodwaters in the lower level. But that's why it was rejected. In our case now, the post-development grading has demonstrated that we do not need the floodwaters to be stored in the house. In fact, you could lawfully block those flood vents or even fill them and not allow the floodwaters to enter into the structure at all. And that would satisfy both building code and the Wetland Protection Act regulations. So it's only really because of that issue that I have changed my mind from the initial request when I was somewhat negative about it. And now, knowing that we have an as-built and satisfied the requirements of floodplain, not including the house, now I feel professionally that the request is reasonable and appropriate, and I think the commission would be well within the regulations to grant the amendment request. So that's what I have for you this evening.
Well, Scott, the house, are you done? You're done for now?
Yeah, yes, thank you.
So, I mean, I don't know how we're even here. I don't even know why the house was constructed without coming back to us to get approval for the change. So you built you built the two houses, you enclosed the lower levels on both of them that were supposed to be left open. And, without even coming back to the commission. So, I mean, we've had so many meetings, we had so much discussion on this, I just can't believe we're at this point.
Yeah,
And,
and I understand completely.
I mean,
I've had,
just,
I've had this conversation with my client, and I understand and would expect that, I expected that response for
It's-
sure.
it's ridiculous. And then, you know, and you're saying that you can, these houses, now that you're saying that the area is graded in such a way that you meet the storage, well, the lower levels flood. We have pictures from the building department that show water in the lower areas. So, I mean,
Yeah, I mean, no question, that they flood because, right, they flood because they have the flood vents. So if the
no,
flood vents were,
those flood vents in the pictures that I've seen, and I've been down there, are higher than, they're higher. I don't even know what elevation they're at. I don't even know, they're at different levels, that none of them match.
so
And,
in the rear, in the rear of the building right now, they're sitting on the sill, like 3 inches above the poured foundation. And, you know, it makes sense at this point, I think, to either put them on the sill so that you don't block 3 inches of water into the basement area, or just block them off altogether, because honestly, they're not needed. They were needed in the original design, and now they're no longer necessary.
but how do we know that they're no longer needed? We don't have
So, right,
we
so
don't have we don't have a plan that shows the elevations. We don't have a stamped drawing.
I think
Where is it?
I think we did. Mitch, you're on the call here. Didn't we submit stamped as-built? I think so, right?
Yep, yeah, so these are interim as-built, and I believe that's what Aaliyah's showing on the screen right now. These were just sent in today.
Yes.
Oh,
We haven't
okay.
had a chance to really review them, but
Yeah.
I would
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
question,
No,
I would
I got
question
you.
the calculation if the building is flooding currently. Maybe the calculation is not correct. That's, I mean, it'd be nice to be able to have a chance to review this before we have to discuss it, but
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Right, absolutely. We just had DGT submit the calcs that back this up. And they came in just today. So you are correct. I'm not requesting the board to act tonight. This is more of a introductory discussion, and at the next meeting, we should be able to have the engineer present as well to help explain any of his calculations, or if he needs to dialogue with Andy or anyone else, you know, prior to the next meeting as well.
Diane,
I mean, the only other comment I'd make is a comment I made to the applicant 4 months ago, or maybe 3 months ago, is that, you know, there are going to be times when because I heard you mention the building code, and I appreciate the position you guys are in. I heard the mention of a building code a lot, but it's almost like the applicant paid attention to the building code and not this commission's recommendations and what we approved. But to paraphrase what I said earlier, there are going to be times when the building code may directly conflict the wetland regulations, and that's probably a good sign you shouldn't build a building there. So that's really kind of the only comment I have at this point.
okay. Diane?
Yeah, when you were talking about the flood vents no longer being necessary because there's area that compensates for flooding outside at this point, do we have that in writing?
So Mitch, jump in here if I'm off on this, but I believe the submittal that came in through Bort Corey from DGT today documented those calcs.
Yes, if we look at the floodplain compensatory storage tables right there, you can look at each interval volume and cumulative volume and match those up, and you'll see that we provide more floodplain compensatory storage than fill.
Okay, so we need to be able to, look at that and think about it. But also, that was the wrong way to go about this. If that was what was happening, you should have come back to us and explained that.
You are 100% correct about that. I'm not here to make excuses on behalf of Rashid. The order of events was inappropriate.
That's it.
Martha?
Thank you. I've seen the pictures of what took place in December, and there's a lot of water inside the basement. Has there been additional grading since then?
No, I believe that was the as-built final, and that's what you see reflected on these plans.
So even if there is compensatory flood storage, the water's not going there. It's going into the basement, and that remains an issue, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I would think, honestly, it's a reasonable thing if we could block these up. We don't need them to be honest, we don't need the vents anymore. They're really discretionary. So the floodwaters, one way to think of it is it's almost like bonus storage area, so it counts as extra, above and beyond, and we don't need it to meet the regs. So there's a way to look at this that is positive in terms of what the regulatory intent is, which is to increase the ability for flood storage on a site. And so now we have not just the ability to store floodwaters on the site proper, but the additional ability to store floodwaters within the foundation. And even though we don't need the foundation flood water storage to meet the regs. So it's kind of like a bonus storage area in some way.
I appreciate that positive perspective on it. As from the perspective of a homeowner who would be purchasing and living in that house, those houses, water in the basement's not fun. And yeah, so I just would like to add that observation to the discussion. Scott, thank you so much for the way that you're leading this discussion. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Jason?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Scott, I am not gonna jump on the beat up on you. To say thank you appearing and going, and I'll echo Martha's comment. You appearing and going through this discussion is very much appreciated. I guess, I understand where you're coming from, that, okay, you don't need the storage now because of the grading. I guess I'm a little concerned, okay, even though we ended up here, the whole process was not followed, I guess, as anyone would expect, since we spent so much time on this earlier.
Right.
So just because we got here today in a fairly good result, I don't think I'm just accepting or okay with that. I think that, there's water in this basement. I don't know if since the vents aren't needed, why even utilize them? Why not just put a wall there? And that may be oversimplifying it, but, I don't know. I also think the commission needs to think through how we deal with the changes that have occurred. And I, for one, certainly sitting here right now, don't have an answer to that. I think I would have to talk with my fellow commissioners and figure that out.
You all set?
I'm all set. Thank you.
And Diane, do you have another question?
Yeah, so I do have a question. So the grading allows for more floodwater storage, but does this affect other properties?
No, I mean, no, as long as we create more flood storage on our site than was there under pre-development conditions, it results in a net benefit to the surrounding abutting properties, because less demand on them to hold those same floodwaters.
I wonder if you can prove that.
Sure. I mean, yeah, if it seems sort of evident on its face that, you know, if we can hold, let's say 10% more water, I'm making that number up, not hold me to it. We hold 10% more water now than we used to be able to. And that extra 10% doesn't need to be held by the neighbor to the left or the neighbor to the right. And these calculations that are on the map here show that is true, not just in the totality, but also at each incremental elevation, which is what the regs require you to demonstrate. So the engineer, Bert Corey, can be here to testify to that at the next meeting, and certainly he could review that with your engineer if you want to get independent verification that that's true. I'm not asking you to just take my word for it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, Scott, I had a follow-up question. You'd mentioned the flood vents as being the source of the water intrusion into the basement, but if I'm the picture I'm looking at, the 4 flood vents that are on the rear of the house, and to Ken's point, the flood vents on the right side of the house are 8 to 10 inches higher than the ones on the rear, but the 4 across the rear sit above the sill of the doors.
Right.
So the water would actually get in through the sill before it would get in through the flood vent. So I'm not sure that the flood vent was actually the source of the water intrusion. I just was curious
I mean,
why
if
you said that.
If the door was open or if there was leakage around the door sill, sure, it could get in there, but the flood vents open up at a much, or any other leaks, you know, or imperfections of gaps in the sill, sure, water could intrude in that, I suppose. But the flood vents, when the water reaches that elevation, it can come in much more rapidly because they're full-on openings.
Yeah.
So
The picture I'm looking at, it looks like it's definitely weeping underneath the door sill. And of course, now all the insulation is wet and the sill plates and everything, of course. But I just was curious because you'd mentioned it twice about removal of the flood vents would stop the water intrusion into the building. I don't think that's the case.
it would depend on how you built that. If you poured it up a higher wall, foundation wall on the backside, or if you actually had it, if it's a wood frame structure, that's hard to make that watertight from standing water, right?
Yeah, it's kind of how we got here, I guess, though, right? It shouldn't have standing water against the sill.
So-
I'm all set.
So that's exactly the point. That whole back, those 2 houses were supposed to be open for just this problem. The water, the storage come in, and it was supposed to be let out. And what you're proposing is still going, you're saying you have more storage in the yard, but it's still filling up with water, and it's still getting into the lower level. The lower level is not supposed to be occupied. It was supposed to be for flood storage. And that's essentially, it's going to happen again. So I don't know how this board could knowingly approve this change, this request, even with the grading that you proposed. It's still going, the water's still going to get into those lower levels. Tell us how it's not.
I'm not here to advocate that it's not. I'm just saying that it meets the regulations without having to go in there.
But
And if it goes in there, it becomes more, that now becomes, in my view, a building department issue, not so much a bordering land subject to flooding performance standard issue. The performance standard is satisfied by having the one-to-one available area to hold floodwaters. It's a simply volume calculation. But the implications of, okay, will it cause mold? Will it rot the house out? Will it get water in? Will someone put storage in there? That's all kind of more mass building code stuff. I
Yeah,
think
but
so.
those were the questions we kept asking,
I
Scott,
agree.
totally throughout the whole, and we knew this possibly could happen, and it did happen, and the neighbors knew it could happen. And now, how can we knowingly approve something when some person buys this house and they come back and they say, oh, you guys approved this, and the place is flooded? And they're living in, they're using that area? That area is not supposed to be used. It's supposed to be for flood storage. And that's what we approved. So, all right, I'm gonna go ask for any questions from the audience. Yes, Mr. Ostrowski, can you come up?
John Ostrowski, 16 Colton Lane, and also former chairman of the Conservation Commission when this project was before us. And I just want to start that I became aware of this problem about 2 months ago. I think it was when Rashid was in here, and he was presenting the amendment to the commission, and I think it took the commission by surprise. Nobody had heard anything about the changes from our order of conditions. And at that point in time, there was never any mention that I can recall at that meeting 2 months ago that the compensatory storage was actually moved from the lower level of the homes to the yards where you apparently have dug out more dirt to provide that. So I'm a little suspect as to why that wouldn't have been brought up that night. That's an important change in this whole concept. And also, if that was the case, then why were flood vents even installed in the foundation if that was not needed and the compensatory storage was now outside of the lower level of the home? Two major questions here. Why wasn't it brought up 2 months ago that compensatory storage was not under the homes? And why were the homes built with flood vents if they weren't even needed? It doesn't seem like the pieces are melding together. So that's my first comment. The other comment is when we went through the review of this project, it was many, many months. I don't know exactly how many, maybe it was 3 or 4 meetings. One of the problems the engineer was having at the time was finding the compensatory storage on that site to build 2 homes. And I can remember when Rashid first came in and presented the 2 homes to us on the very first meeting, I had made the comment that this site had been before the commission many times before, and it was problematic. And the only time that it seemed to resolve the problems was when the applicant went down to 1 home. And I asked Rashid point blank, would you be willing to go down to 1 home and remove many of the problems that you're going to be faced with? And his answer was no. He wanted to do 2 homes. So we went many, many months back and forth reviewing his design and the changes. And in order to get the compensatory storage, even with the lower levels of the homes in play, I believe he had to go across the brook and scoop out some of an embankment and build a retaining wall. And the commission has the plans. I'm a little vague on that right now. But we couldn't even provide the compensatory, or you couldn't provide the compensatory storage on the brook side where the homes were located. It had to go to the opposite side and scoop out some fill. So all of a sudden, now we found compensatory storage on the site. And I know how hard it was to find it back then, so I would recommend to the commission that they review it very carefully, that they in fact have compensatory storage outside of the lower level of these homes. And when Rashid was in here with the homes, we made it very clear to him that the lower level was not to be referred to as a basement. It was not a habitable area. It was not to have mechanical equipment in it that could be subject to floodwaters and taking up flood storage. It also would have to be designed so that mold and mildew wouldn't be an issue because it would be flooding under the home. And obviously, the upper levels could be subject to the mold and mildew conditions. All of this was brought up. So this was a well-kicked-around project. And all of a sudden, tonight, the problems have all gone away. There now is compensatory storage found on that site where, initially, we couldn't find, you couldn't find it. So I'm a little upset about the whole thing. I thought this should have been brought to the commission immediately when the scope was changed to provide compensatory storage outside of the lower level. And I still think, regardless, if you do have compensatory storage outside of the lower level, you still have a major problem here in that your basement level, I won't call it a basement, it was always a flood storage basin. These people have a flood storage basin below their home. That's there, and we know it because in the past 2 storms, that has flooded out. And obviously, it'll continue to flood out as it's been designed. So there has to be a lot of careful consideration given to the review of these plans. And that's about it.
Okay,
Thank you.
My name's Steve Janul. It's 33 Melvin Ave. We are on the property right above. This gentleman just brought up about the compensatory storage. He actually has 2 retaining walls that he has constructed up against my property, where that compensatory storage that you guys were talking about, which he said was approved. He had 1 tier wall that was made out of stones. We went back to the past meetings that you guys had in April. He said he was going about 4 feet. And then all of a sudden he went on top of that wall right there and actually infringed and dug into my property, which he was told that everything was agreed upon. It was in my property. There's a stone wall, probably a good 5.5 feet high. And then on top of that, he tiered that. So the total wall that's embedded into my property, which he dug out, which I showed him the stakes and everything, is actually infringed on my property with no notification to me or my wife on 33 Melvin Ave. And now when you bring up the compensatory storage, that's what I can kind of figure it out when they're talking about the vents or anything else. Now is that going to come back on the other side of the brook and starting to, which we've already noticed with all the construction he's done, started to have some erosion up on top of my property. And my property is pretty high up from those stones and everything that he put in there. So it was under, he explained to us that it was already agreed upon that he could actually build that wall. And it doesn't sound, we never got any notification that he could. Do you remember that meeting of the walls that you guys were talking about? He was saying he was bringing in big stones.
Yeah, I do, but it was all confined to this property. It wasn't supposed to be on other.
Well, it's on his property, but when he started digging that second tier up, there are boulders that are actually embedded into my property.
Yeah, I don't believe that was discussed.
No, and that's where talking about the compensatory storage now I was trying to figure out where he was going to get it, because that property has never, ever flooded like that, ever. In the 50 years my wife's family has owned it, all right? And now we look down below, and their water actually crests into that basement. And then, never mind, when you're saying that you're going to block the vents or anything like that, now is that going to rush it back to the other side and start infringing not only on my property, but on 38 Sadler Ave, which is my daughter's property, okay? Which is next door, because we have 2 properties. So we were kind of unaware of that stone wall that was going up so high into our embankment, and didn't know if that was agreed upon towards the committee.
I don't know, but what we can do is we can ask the engineer. Mitch, did you do the survey?
No, I did not do the survey. Bert, he did the survey and he's expecting to be here in 2 weeks.
All right, so you probably should do an as-built of that wall and where it was constructed and elevations of that as well.
Sure, yeah, we can have Bert definitely look into that area.
Because
think-
it doesn't seem like if it was constructed on somebody else's property, that could be a problem.
It's
Certainly.
infringing right into the property. And I showed him, and he tried to tell me he was 2 feet off. I showed him the stakes, I actually gave him a line, and the line tells the truth.
Okay,
Okay?
yep.
Thank you.
Mr. Ostrowski?
John Ostrowski, 16 Colton Lane. I think the wall he's referring to, that's the one on the opposite side of the brook that I mentioned. And we had questioned Rashid about that also, about how big of a wall was it, elevation-wise. Best of my knowledge, I thought that was supposed to be just a single-tier wall. He was sort of downplaying the magnitude of this, because my concern was that over time, it would cave in, and then we'd have more fill flooding into the flood zone. But from what I can remember, it was supposed to be a relatively, let's say, shallow height on the wall. But the plan should reflect that.
Well, regardless, it didn't go into other properties. It's,
Obviously, you can't just keep pulling back on a slope into another guy's property. Yeah, okay.
Any other questions? Aaliyah?
Yes, we can address these at the next meeting too. I just wanted to the square footage for the elevation at 395 was a little confusing to me. Sorry, let me zoom out a little so I can see. Because it looked like the total filled area was 1,523 square feet, but the compensatory area was 1,249 square feet, so I was wondering how the math was going to math to meet more cumulative storage at the lowest elevation. And then I was wondering how it was sorry, I screw up this word every time, hydrologically connected to the stream. And that might need to go into further discussion that we can have with Bert, but I just wanted to note those.
Yeah, those are fair questions. Again, this is Scott. I think maybe a working session meeting with the engineer, Bert Corey, and Andrew on your staff might be useful, just so some of these more technical questions can be answered.
Okey doke, that sounds good. So I'll keep those in mind. I think that answers my questions.
Thank you. Another question I had is, can you provide the I don't have the plan here, confirm the elevation of the finished basement floor?
we have what it was supposed to be in the.
Correct.
Yeah.
So the as-built of that, was that provided to us?
Let me see if that's included in this one.
What's in the interim?
Sorry, let me share one more time. Boop. So the concrete floor elevation might be 395.
Yep, that sounds right.
Yep. Yeah, for both of them, it looks like the concrete floor elevation is 395. With a sill at 402.05.
And that's that's
what was built, or that's what?
yeah,
that
is
we
that what
approved?
was built?
That's what is on this as-built, the most recent as-built that I have.
And that's, Scott, the most recent as-built that Aaliyah has, that, you confirm that elevation of the floor?
So I'm not the surveyor, but I'm reading the same plan you are. That's what the survey plan seems to show. But again, I'd rather defer to Bert so he can testify to that, at the next meeting or with Andrew. But yeah, that's what it appears to show.
All right, so, any other questions?
Well, I just have an obvious question. If the vents are meant to allow water to flow in, but they are above the level of the floor, then how does the water get out?
From the
It's a good
pictures to
question,
the door.
and the current arrangement as it sits over there doesn't allow that lower 3 inches to release other than through the seams between the sill plate and the foundation itself, unless there was a sump put in, or unless the vents were set on the foundation itself and the sill was cut to lower them 3 inches.
Thank you.
So one proposal, we had a meeting with the wetland scientist for the project in Rashid a few weeks ago, and one of the proposals for the amended order had been, if it was to remain this way, the possibility of installing either a sump pump or just even a
Where are you going to pump it to?
depression. That's a great question. So that's a secondary question. Or just a depression in the ground to allow the water to go somewhere that wasn't the basement or the understory floor.
But when the area is flooded, it's flooded.
Yes,
you're
exactly.
not-
So
you're
if
not
the,
gonna
if
be
the
able to
groundwater
pump
is
it up.
at
Was there a proposal to put the
elevation.
house on pilings? Because that might be the only thing that works.
All right, any other questions from the audience? All right, so Scott, are you going to ask for a continuance?
Yes, please, thank you.
Okay, what's our next meeting, Elliot?
It's on-
February 20.
This will be continued to February 20th.
Thank you all, have a good night.
Thanks, Scott. Okay. Do we have a notice on this one?
Yes, you do.
Okay. You ready?
Yep.
Notice is hereby given in accordance with the provisions of General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Town of Shrewsbury Wetlands bylaws and regulations that Essex Petrie, on behalf of Green Street, Shrewsbury LLC, 1900 West Park Drive, Suite 180, Westboro, Mass., has filed a notice of intent for the construction of residential multifamily housing community consisting of 300 units, clubhouse, and supporting amenities and infrastructure at 33-69 Green Street.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Excuse me. Leah, were you able to get the, awesome, perfect, thank you.
There you go.
There it is. All right, so I'll let you drive. Essex Petrie, with Pulte Homes, representing 3369 Green Street. Thank you for your time tonight. Thank you, Leah, for your help with this. I do also have a couple members of my team joining remotely with us tonight that will be speaking at certain points during the presentation. But first, I guess just the introductory is I did meet with the commission a month or so ago, or 2 months ago, regarding the ANRAD, and said that we'd come back with the opportunity to talk into more details about the project itself. And so this is our first meeting to really dive into the details of what the project is and what it consists of, and give the commission the opportunity to ask questions and hear from our wetland scientist. So next slide, please. First, I just want to introduce the team that we do have working with us. Again, I work for Pulte Homes in the Land Planning Group. Civil Design Group is our civil engineering and general engineering firm, and Matt Leidner is joining us tonight. He is our site engineer. He will be presenting some of the engineering details on the project this evening. SWCA is our natural resource consultant and wetland scientist, and Meredith Bornstein will be joining us tonight to speak with you. She performed the ANRAD and then conducted the site walk with the peer reviewer this past fall. We also have MDM Transportation on the team doing our traffic. Coughlin Environmental Services is handling our utility infrastructure design. And then we have Smolak and Vaughn handling our legal services. And Stephanie Kiefer is joining us tonight as well on behalf of Smolak and Vaughn. Next slide. So just really briefly touching upon, we've been, as I mentioned, we met with the commission earlier this year or last year regarding the ANRAD, but we've been out and about with the town, various departments in the community, gathering information and informing about the project. We originally met with the select board last February. We received some comments and made some adjustments to our project. Then we came back to the select board in September after additional meetings with public safety and DPW and other town departments to make adjustments to our program. We hosted a community meeting at the senior center in November, where we had a number of 20-plus residents show up, and we engaged for over 2 hours in answering questions and had some good conversation with community members. And we are just beginning in our Zoning Board of Appeals process. This is a Chapter 40B project, and we had our first meeting with ZBA on December 18th. It was really kind of that first introductory ZBA meeting where we went through kind of high level of various elements of the project. And we're now going to be stepping into our phased meetings with ZBA starting the end of this month and continuing for the next couple months based on different topic areas. Next slide. Just again, quickly to kind of bring everyone back to where we are as far as project location. We're kind of in the southeast corner of town, not too far from the Grafton and Westboro borders. We are just off the eastbound side of Route 20, and the project site itself is sandwiched between Green Street and South Street. If you're familiar with the area at the Green Street Route 20 intersection, there is a signalized intersection, and the South Street Route 20 intersection, it's unsignalized with a right turn only restriction set at that intersection. And so now I'm going to go into some high-level details about the project before I turn it over to Matt and Meredith to talk more details. As I mentioned, this is a Chapter 40B project. It's roughly 36-acre parcel that we'll be working on. The program includes 6 4-story buildings, each with 50 condominiums. They're all home ownership units. Each of those buildings also includes a garage under, significantly reducing the amount of impervious surface associated with necessary parking and reducing that surface parking area. As it's a 40B project, 25% of the homes will be affordable, and so there will be 75 total affordable units as part of the project. As I mentioned, we did meet with Select Board and various other town departments and made some adjustments and changes to our program as a result of those meetings. Just a couple of those high level, you'll notice a parcel kind of transecting the project the northwestern area there, I think where that cursor is, from South Street to Green Street. That's a parcel of land that we will be donating to the town for the town to what the town looks to do with that is to plan, permit, and construct a new roadway, a new public roadway from South Street through to Green Street. Really, the end goal of that is to kind of relieve some of the congestion at that unsignalized South Street Route 20 intersection and direct it towards the currently signalized intersection. Additionally, and through conversations with public safety, we added the second entrance you can see in the southernmost, or the bottom of the page there, thank you. That's an emergency egress only access, but based on conversations with Seth Colby and Police Chief, we added that emergency egress in. And then finally, we also did add some amenities to be associated with the program, including a clubhouse and pickleball courts at the main entrance at the section that's got the 5 larger buildings. I also do want to note that all of the buildings, including the clubhouse, will be all electric. So there'll be no reliance on fossil fuels for the project. And each of the garage unders in the buildings will accommodate EV charging. And we will also provide EV charging stations spread within each of the surface lots for the buildings. So that's really kind of the high-level overview of what the project entails. Obviously, if there's any questions, if you want, before we dive in, then our next step was I'm gonna turn it over to our engineer, Matt Leidner, to go into the real nitty-gritty details of the design. So if there are no questions at this point, I will turn it over to Matt.
Thank you, Essex. Good evening, commission members, members of the public. My name is Matt Leidner with Civil Design Group. I am a civil engineer representing Pulte Homes and the engineer who did the design of the project. So I will walk you through and give you an overview of the engineering design details of the project. And of course, I'm happy to answer questions either along the way as appropriate or after my presentation. So if you could please go to the next slide. I thought it would be most appropriate to start with the existing conditions plan, and all the plans you see in this presentation here, in my part of the presentation, are included in the plan set that was submitted as part of the notice of intent. So I thought it'd be appropriate to start with the existing conditions plan, and just to get everyone's bearings here.
Matt, hold on one second. Sorry, yeah, that's sheet S1 in that plan set. We're just manipulating the hard copy plans to get to the right sheet.
The survey sheets are at the end of the plan set, the hard copy.
Yeah, so it's at the back of the set, actually.
The back.
So
How far back? What page?
S1.
This one. Okay.
Let me know when I may proceed.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, great. So just to get everyone's bearings, the rotation's slightly different now on these plans, where Route 20 is on the left side of the sheet, Green Street is along the bottom of the sheet, and South Street is up at the top of the sheet. And as you can see on this plan, the topography of the site generally slopes from the perimeter of the site to the center of the site. And there's a wetland complex that runs through the center of the site, essentially bisecting the site, running from west to east. So from near the Green Street Route 20 intersection on east toward the Appaloosa Drive end of the site. There's also a finger of wetlands extending southward toward Green Street, and it actually flows into into the wetland complex that flows from west to east through the site. As Essex had mentioned in his presentation, these wetlands were delineated by SWCA in the spring of last year, and then just a few months ago in November, the commission issued an order of resource area delineation to formalize those wetland lines. And so the wetlands on the site essentially carve the property into 2 distinct upland areas, and those 2 areas are what form the development envelope for Emerald Run. Next slide, please. So this is an overview of the project. This is the overall layout plan, sheet 5. And here we can see the 2 areas of the.
Well, I gotta get to your.
Matt, I'm
Hold on,
sorry,
Matt.
pass.
Sorry, back to the beginning now.
This is overall layout plan number 5.
What sheet is that?
It's just called overall layout plan number 5, so let me see.
It's 5 from the cover sheet, so,
Sheet 5.
yeah.
Yep.
All right, we're good.
Thank you.
Okay, no problem. So the project consists of 300 proposed residential units contained within 6 50-unit buildings. Each building is 4 stories of residential living over parking, and the units will consist of 1, 2, and 3-bedroom units. The project also includes amenity areas. One is a clubhouse that is located in the cluster, within the cluster of 5 buildings. And there will also be 3 other outdoor patio and seating areas, as well as a set of 2 pickleball courts. Access to the site, as Essex had mentioned, is entirely off of Green Street. One access closest to Route 20 to access the single building, and then another main access further up Green Street, which is a full access to get to the 5 cluster part of the project. And then the southernmost access, or to the right on this page, access on Green Street is just a gated emergency access. And the internal circulation will consist of a series of drive aisles and parking lots associated with each of the 5 buildings in the 5-building cluster, and then just a single parking lot with access drive for the single building up closer to Route 20. Each building will contain 50 garage parking spaces. So within the footprint of the building, underneath the residential floors, is a parking garage. So there'll be 50 spaces under each building in those garages, as well as 40 surface spaces. And of note is that more than half of the parking for this project that is proposed will be under the buildings and within the footprint of the buildings, which results in far less disturbance and impervious area than if all the parking were surface parking. And it's actually quite significant. So it's almost 3 acres of impervious that would have otherwise been additional impervious had that parking been surface parking. So it's a feature that does save quite a bit of disturbance and reduces significantly the stormwater runoff from the project. There are a handful of additional parking spaces associated with the clubhouse, and there's an outdoor recycling area as well, and there's a few parking spaces associated with that. And the parking will include EV chargers, both surface parking and the garage parking spread throughout the project. Next slide, please. The proposal included a landscaping plan set as well, which included a robust landscaping program. I wanted to just mention in this presentation that all of the proposed plantings are native cultivars. They were all chosen to be ones that are well adapted to the Massachusetts climate, obviously being native cultivars, but also selected specifically to withstand periods of low rainfall. Next slide, please.
If you'd like to see. Just kidding. We're moving on to stormwater.
What sheet is this?
Stormwater?
Matt, which sheet is the stormwater sheet?
It's the grading and drainage plans.
11, I believe. I believe it's sheet 11.
Sheet 9 through 11.
Yep.
Okay, all right.
Okay, great. So the project incorporates a comprehensive stormwater management system, which consists of treatment measures. Those include bioretention and infiltration, as well as mitigation measures, which consist of detention to control the flow of runoff from the site. The stormwater design does incorporate sustainable elements as well as LID techniques. So some examples of those elements and techniques include that the project has been designed to fit in with the existing terrain. So there's quite a bit of topography going on this site, and the layout of the driveways and the parking lots and the access aisles was all done to follow that terrain to the extent possible. And the orientation of the buildings was also very specifically done in such a manner to work with the terrain. So these buildings have the garage access at one end, and that access is lower. That's the low end of the building relative to the residential floors. And we also have the ability to grade down and expose the garage on the back of the building. And so we've oriented these buildings in a way that we can really work with the terrain and sort of step the project from the top of the hill down toward the bottom of the hill. Another technique, as I mentioned, is the fact that the majority of the parking is contained within a footprint of the buildings. So that, again, is a significant decrease in impervious area than if that parking was on the surface. We've also only proposed sidewalk on one side of the roadway or parking lot where we have sidewalk. As you can see on the grading plan here, the yard areas around the buildings were kept to a minimum, so we don't have expansive yard areas that will be maintained. Of course, there will be some yard area, but the front yards, the parking lots are fairly close to the building, so there won't be a huge front yard in front of any of the buildings. And then the backyards as well were kept small, so it's less landscaping to maintain, it's less irrigation, but it's also, probably most importantly, it's less disturbance of land, so it keeps the limit of work to a minimum.
I have a question.
Yes.
On the grading, I'm on Plan C, sheet 11, building number 3, you're grading right out to the wetland line. Is there a way that can be pulled back or changed?
So that's up the top right-hand corner of the page there. So we're grading from the back of that building. We are grading down, and there we have a retaining wall behind building 3. Yep, up at the top right. We have a retaining wall proposed behind that building. Now we've held the retaining wall 5 feet off of the wetland line, and we did that to be able to get in there and actually build that wall without having to go into the wetlands. So we are very close to the wetlands in that area, but we're not into the wetland.
Right, and I understand that, and you understand that we do have a bylaw. I know you probably don't have to go to the letter of the law on that because it's a 40B project, but we would like to see something. 5 feet's awfully close. You know, we have a 15-foot no disturb and a 30-foot no build. If you could move that back a little bit, just to give us a little bit more of a cushion. I mean, 5 feet's very tight.
Okay, I appreciate your comment, and that is certainly something that, as a team, we can talk about and see if there is a way that we can pull that back somewhat.
And just to touch on that real quick, and absolutely we will look at that. It's a balance in that location, and actually Meredith is going to talk in more detail on that from her perspective. But it's already a tall wall at that point, so it's a balance of creating, and we'd be cutting into that slope even further and creating. To pull away from the wetland and creating a taller wall. So it's a matter of balancing that, but we can certainly take a look at what makes sense.
All right, maybe do, instead of one large wall, do 2 smaller ones.
Sure, yep.
Just to give ourselves a little bit of a cushion. I mean.
Like 2 terraced walls, I mean, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Okay, that was my question.
Okay, all right, thank you. And so, I was talking about the yard areas being kept to a minimum to reduce the limit of work. And I wanted to mention that relative to the number of units proposed here, which is 300 units, it actually is a very compact development. So the site is approximately 37 acres, and the total disturbance that is proposed is 17 acres. And so that translates to a disturbance of about 6/100ths of an acre per unit. So the disturbance is far less per unit than a typical housing development would be. So I just wanted to note that relative to the number of units, this is a compact development.
No,
So with 17 acres proposed to be disturbed, 20 acres are proposed to be untouched. So more than half the site is proposed to remain untouched.
and just a and of that 20 acres, how much is wetland?
I don't have that number. That's a good question, actually. We can certainly provide that next time. So a large amount of that is wetland, but there is also a fairly significant amount that is upland. So it's not just the wetland areas, but of course the wetland areas are within that.
Right, so if you could give us the wetland and upland.
Yep. Yeah, that makes sense.
That way, at least we can know that too.
Yes, okay.
Certainly.
Yes, thank you. That's a good question. And then once the project is completed, there will be a total of approximately 30 acres of green space, meaning what was undisturbed plus what is going to be disturbed, but then put back as landscaping within the development. And so that's more than 80% of the site in the end will end up being green space. So as I had mentioned, the landscaping was selected to withstand periods of low rainfall. The design does use low impact development techniques, including bioretention areas, as well as the parking beneath the buildings. And then the town planner, Chris McGoldrick, had asked us about a technique called micro basins, which are essentially very small, but frequent or numerous depressions that can be introduced throughout some of the disturbed areas. So, for example, using some of the salvaged trees and laying them down on some of the slopes to sort of create pockets that can capture stormwater, even just creating roughened surfaces along some of the slopes to create little pockets to collect stormwater. So it's not something we've proposed at this point, but it's something we are certainly interested in looking at and would like to look at. And we offered to Chris that as part of the peer review process of the project that the ZBA has commissioned, that we would certainly be willing to look into that and perhaps introduce some of those techniques into this project as well. The submittal package included with the NOI, in addition to the plans that you're looking at tonight, also included a stormwater report with a narrative and also a set of stormwater calculations showing the pre-existing and proposed hydrologic characteristics of the site. That is undergoing peer review by Graves Engineering as part of the ZBA process. And we understand any day now, I believe that we're supposed to get that peer review. And we'd be happy to work with them to address any questions that they have as part of that. And so next slide, please. So last week, before I turn it over to Meredith from SWCA, I wanted to just touch on the natural resources. So first, the project
What
is 80%.
Could you pause for a sec? I'm sorry.
Matt, hold on one
What
second.
sheet is this?
It says layout
This is,
five.
this is kind of, we just created
You made that? Okay.
as for this presentation,
Right.
really just kind of, it's an overview of really the small area of impact
Right.
and what Meredith is going to speak to as far as from her perspective.
Gotcha.
All right,
So
Matt, go ahead.
So while the project does have areas that are within the 100-foot buffer zone, and hence the submission of the notice of intent that were before you tonight, with 80% of the project, so 80% of the disturbed area, proposed disturbed area, is outside of the 100-foot buffer zone. So the vast majority of disturbance is outside of the 100-foot buffer zone. There is one small area of resource area impact that is being proposed up along Green Street. It's the yellow circle at the bottom of the page. And it's necessary to gain safe access into the 5-building cluster portion of the project. Based on the grades of Green Street and the sight lines when you pull out of the site drive, the driveway needs to be in that location. Now, the driveway itself does not propose to fill any wetlands, so it's not within any wetland footprint. However, alongside the proposed driveway, there is an existing rubble head wall, I'll call it, dilapidated, that takes an existing culvert that flows under Green Street on and discharges on the project side in the vicinity of that proposed driveway. And so in order to construct the proposed driveway, what is that existing rubble wall will need to be rebuilt as a proper head wall. And so as part of the project, we're proposing to rebuild that as a head wall in order to accommodate the driveway, and the existing culvert will be tied into and still discharged from that proposed rebuilt head wall. That head wall or that culvert, that existing culvert that flows under Green Street, comes out of the rubble head wall, and the area that it discharges into just downstream of that is an existing concrete weir structure. So this area has definitely been disturbed historically, but we are proposing in that area between the new head wall and that concrete weir structure to reinforce the ground to avoid erosion. So our concern is that when we go in and rebuild that head wall, we could introduce a higher likelihood for erosion to occur from that area. So from an engineering standpoint, we feel that it would be best practice to go in and reinforce that area with riprap. And so we are proposing that as well as part of this project. And that is what the wetlands disturbance stems from, is the reinforcement of the ground associated with that work. And so it's a small area. It's about 170 square feet of BVW that will be impacted. And we've proposed a mitigation plan to replicate that area. And I'll turn it over to Meredith, and she can talk more about that mitigation plan. Thank you.
All right, sorry.
Meredith, hold on one second, sorry.
I was just, if she's going to, Meredith's going to speak to the mitigation and the.
Yes,
replication.
absolutely.
Okay,
Yep.
that was, my question is, I'll ask Meredith.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Meredith Morenstein, SWCA Wetlands Consultant on this project. Could you go to the next slide, please? I don't know if we can zoom out a little bit. So this slide, so myself and our landscape architects at SWCA put together wetland mitigation plan, and we provided a compensatory wetland mitigation report as well. This is just an overview of where the impacts are proposed and then our proposed mitigation area. So the overview of the site with existing conditions in the background. So as you can see, and Matt mentioned, the proposed impact is about 170 square feet of alteration. We're proposing a 323 square foot mitigation area to replicate what's being altered. That's almost a 2-to-1 ratio for replication. So it meets the 1-to-1 ratio that's required under the Wetlands Protection Act. So we did, when assessing where to put the mitigation area, we looked all over, and this location was proposed for a few reasons. One being that the retaining wall you were asking about is sort of adjacent to this area, so equipment would be, during construction, equipment will be in the adjacent buffer zone where the mitigation area is proposed. So we were trying to prevent additional alteration to buffer zone when constructing the mitigation area. So it does meet the performance standards because this is all one huge wetland complex. So I think the location is appropriate. It's adjacent to an existing wetland. We are proposing to dig down to get to the water table, and then we'll be adding a foot of wetland topsoil and to meet the existing wetland line, the elevation of the existing wetland. I think, can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. Okay, this is a zoomed in area of the proposed mitigation area. Right now we're proposing, based on the size, we propose 3 trees, 9 shrubs, 16 ferns, and wetland seed mix. That's after we get to the correct elevation. But we squeezed in as many plantings as we could in this area. But I think that's basically the site. Like I said, it's almost a 2-to-1 ratio for replication to alteration, or alteration to replication, sorry. And yeah, it's a pretty small area adjacent to an existing wetland. There are notes on these plans as well that speak to the performance standards under the Wetlands Protection Act that I'm sure the commission will include in their order at some point, but I'm happy to talk about questions or concerns about this.
On the mitigation, if you could just follow our guidance with our bylaw. I mean, I think it's pretty close to 2-to-1.
Yeah.
And there is a period of time that you would have to monitor it. So if you could mirror what we're asking in our bylaw, that would be helpful.
Generally we have a 2-year success rate or 2-year monitoring period to ensure a 75% success rate. I think that's reflected in the state regulations.
Yeah, and I don't recall exactly what it said. Meredith, can you speak to that, the monitoring that was included in what you had put together?
Yeah, it's on the, this sheet has some notes, and it's not showing right here on the, okay, we didn't include that. But it just speaks to monitoring for 2 years after construction, and the performance standards state that the wetland should meet a 75% cover of wetland vegetation after 2 years. So, the first year is just monitoring, making sure things are growing. And then a report would be provided to the commission. And then after the second year, I would hope that we'd reach 75% wetland vegetation, and then another report would be provided to the commission. But yeah, we would go out during the growing season and assess the area, conduct or collect data for a wetland vegetation plot, and that would all be provided in the report. And if you have a 2-to-1 ratio, so we wanted to do 2-to-1, but it was the retaining wall was it was just complicated, and we didn't want to disturb. There's an existing stone wall we didn't want to disturb. So if that retaining wall gets moved, we could eke in a few more square feet. It was 11 feet shy of being a 2-to-1 ratio. So I'm sure we could squeeze that in if that wall gets moved a little bit. And is that correct? It was 2-to-1 ratio?
Correct.
Under
Yes, yep.
Okay. Yeah, and it's on the notes on the plans do state that the area will be monitored, but I would assume that you would want that in your order.
Yeah, that will be a special condition, but it's pretty standard for replication areas.
Yes, absolutely. I think we also have on the plans that a wetland scientist should be on site during construction to guide the contractors in building a wetland replication area. Not everybody is. It's not something that people do all that often. So it's sort of a nuanced thing in construction. We do recommend somebody kind of guide the folks, whether that's Aaliyah or consultant.
Yeah, generally we have, because I am limited in my knowledge, we generally have the wetland scientist for the project, so probably you, Meredith, on site just to kind of make sure the right soils are going in at the right, depths and quantities, and then the plantings are going where they're supposed to, and if they're not working out, we can change as needed.
Right.
Yep. And that's something that we have experience doing on previous projects as well, so.
Wonderful.
Okay.
And so we're now open up for any other questions and whatnot. The presentation pieces, we're through that.
Okay. Chris?
Yeah, you guys addressed a lot of what I was concerned. I didn't hear, maybe it was mentioned earlier, but who's constructing I'll call it the connector road between Green Street and South Street?
That
You guys
is-
constructing that, or is that the town?
We are not handling any of that piece. We are donating the land, and then that's in town purview from there forward.
Okay, because there's a wetlands crossing, so I was.
Yeah.
So if
I'm
that road
sure that
doesn't
you'll
get-
be working closely with Andy on
Right.
that.
If that road doesn't get built, you would be able to still move forward with the plan, or?
Correct, yeah, that is completely, again, from our perspective, it's just a parcel of land.
Okay.
Beyond that, it's outside of us.
And you'd have two entrances, you'd have building 6 with one entrance and the other 5 buildings with another entrance. Is that how that would work?
That's how it's
That's how
gonna
it
be.
works anyway, right?
Yeah, exactly. We don't actually access anything off of, other than Green Street, so.
And I appreciate all the work you guys have done to try to limit the amount of impervious surfaces. It's still a lot in a site that is so overwhelmingly wetlands. So, I mean, I guess we're gonna see a revised plan with the wall moved. If I have any other questions, I'll probably come back after that. I think you addressed all my other questions.
Thank you.
Diane?
I don't have any questions right now.
Martha?
You make a point of saying how little yard space there will be, which is great. I appreciate the attempt to moderate the amount of disturbance to the existing area. My question is, the people who will be in these condos, I don't know what age group they would be, but if there are children, I would want to have some sort of connection with the green space, the natural area around there. So I wondered if you had, so that the children can access the natural spaces, open spaces. And I wondered if you had any thoughts about that.
So we are, is there a camera? So I feel weird talking to Martha. I don't know where to look, so. So
There's
Martha, I
several,
apologize if
they're
I'm
just
staring
everywhere.
off into the ether, but, so we have had those conversations and discussions regarding walking trails and whatnot. As you can see in the plans, and if you're familiar with the site, there is a lot of topography out there. So we want to make sure that anything that we look at is safe and passable and makes sense for those users. From a demographic perspective, just to touch on that briefly, typically with our developments, we do not find that there are just by default a lot of children. It's 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom condos. Being that it's a 40B project, EOHLC does require a certain percentage be 3-bedroom, and so there will be 8 3-bedroom condos as part of the development, but primarily it's 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom, and just the statistics show, and we, as part of our ZBA application, provided a fiscal impact study of not just our developments, but primarily of our developments, just the number of children that typically live in our developments is fairly small. So we designed our amenity package towards our more typical demographic, and so we have sidewalks and walking paths directly to the patio and grill areas there are multiple of those displaced throughout, kind of convenient to each of the buildings, as well as there's the clubhouse with the pickleball pickleball courts across the driveway, and also behind the clubhouse, there's a patio area where we will have grills and tables and chairs as well. But just to get back to the point on the nature piece of it, a walking trail is definitely something that we are considering. It came up in our ZBA meeting last month. It has come up in our conversations, with other departments within town. It would also just be an amenity that would be beneficial to our homeowners as well. So it is definitely something that we will consider as we are moving forward.
Thank you. I have at least one other question, if I might. I think this one is directed to Meredith. The planting plans and the particular plants that you've chosen, especially the woody plants, do those reflect the existing vegetation in the wetlands?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we assessed the existing wetlands and what was growing in there, and that's what we always base our what we propose. So we're proposing, let me see, 2 red maples and 1 yellow birch. I believe it's, no, I don't have, I think winterberry and dogwood.
I don't remember seeing dogwood. I think I saw blueberry.
Oh, maybe it was a high bush blueberry then.
Okay.
Let me see if I can pull up the plan.
It was winterberry and high bush blueberry.
Winterberry and high bush blueberry.
Okay.
Yep.
All 3 are probably out there.
There is a birch as well, a yellow birch.
The yellow birch, yeah. I thought that was a nice touch.
And cinnamon fern. And then there's a list in the wetland seed mix we're proposing. It has numerous herbaceous, yeah, there's the plan. Wetland sedges and rushes and some flowering asters, that type of thing.
Okay. As long as it somewhat mirrors the vegetation, the existing vegetation, I don't have any objections to it. And then you said that you would bringing in wetland soils, and if I heard right, where would those be coming from?
They're usually manufactured at a place that makes soil. I forget what that's called right now, but yeah, somebody has, it's a mixture. It's a very high organic content. So they usually get loam, which you would just put on like the slopes there, but then they add decomposed material to really up the organic material.
So how do you control for the possibility of invasives coming in with that soil?
Well, the people bringing it in have to certify that there's no invasives within the soil, and yeah, that is a risk. But hopefully the people that are creating the soil are following the rules.
But there are rules and regulations in place for that.
Or at least like as part of the order of conditions.
Okay.
3-year monitoring.
I don't want to make it onerous, but it would be nice.
Yeah, absolutely. And part of the monitoring is to look at invasives. One nice thing, there's not really invasives on the site, not too many invasives. There is some honeysuckle where the impacts are proposed, but down in this particular area, there's not adjacent invasives. So that's a good thing as far as them impacting the mitigation area.
It's a nice wetland complex in there, and it would be great to see this project succeed with little real impacts to that. Can I ask one more question?
Yeah,
of course.
Thank you. You mentioned a recycling area, and I know that sometimes we have, not sometimes, but we try to make sure that pieces of litter and trash don't get blown around and end up into the wetlands, in the wetlands. So I wondered if you could talk to any mitigation measures that you have in the plans for that.
Yep, there are two recycling areas proposed, one in the larger five kind of building cluster, and then one, a separate one down, smaller one for the other building. And those are fully enclosed, fenced in, and gated as well, with a tall fence to the closed dumpsters, so to exactly avoid what it is that you're referring to as far as the trash or debris getting blown out or carried out.
Okay, thank you. I'm all set.
Okay, Jason?
No questions at this time.
All right, I have one more. It's regarding the bioretention swale or basin. It's behind Building 6. Can you, I mean, you don't have to do it tonight, or when you come back, can you just speak to how that's going to be constructed and what the materials are and whatnot?
Just the one on Building 6 or the other ones too?
I was just looking at the one in Building 6, but in general, how they're going to be, I'm sure there's a detail, but.
Yes,
Yes.
You're correct that there is a detail, a cross-section of the bioretention areas, and I'd be happy to discuss that whenever appropriate. But there are three proposed bioretention areas. There's the one behind Building 6, and then there's also one behind Building 1 and one behind Building 5. And so they are designed to take what are the fire department access roads that go behind each of those buildings. So they're a low use, theoretically those roads never get used unless there's an emergency vehicle that would need to use them. So they're hopefully no use, but let's say a low use road, and the water would sheet flow off those driveways through a pea stone diaphragm and a vegetated filter strip, and then end up in the bioretention area. The bioretention area is designed with specific soils to meet the DEP standard. There's a certain soil mix that it needs to be. They're vegetated, and then there is an outlet structure designed so that the water would pond around 6 inches plus or minus in the basin, and then anything beyond that would get captured by the outlet control device. So the bioretention areas are not designed to mitigate large storms. That's not their intent at all. They're for the more frequent, first flush type of rainfall, to treat that. So to treat the smaller, more frequent storms as opposed to, like, say, 100-year storm. So they can handle a 100-year storm, and our calculations show that, but their function is to treat your more everyday storm.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
You guys all set? Any questions from the audience? Okay. Are you going to ask for a continuance?
Yes, we will, excuse me, request a continuance to the next meeting, and particularly we will look at that wall behind Building 3 that approaches the wetland in that area, to find a better balance to pull it away from that. That makes sense.
Okay.
And the 2-to-1 replication area.
Yes, yeah.
All right.
We'll find those 11 square feet.
We will see you next month.
All right, thank you very much. Thanks, all.
Thank you.
So, I wonder if there's somebody here from a meeting that was scheduled
We
earlier.
didn't have anybody earlier.
All right.
So the first one,
Bob, what are you here
36
for?
Sewell Street.
I'm actually here for 198 South Quinsigamon Ave, some associated grading on 190 South Quinsigamon for
Certificate of compliance.
Oh, it's a all right.
Yeah.
And then the gentleman behind?
for 31 Pal Drive?
Enforcement.
Enforcement, okay. Okay,
So we had a couple of no-shows.
right. So the people that didn't,
So do we have anyone present for 36 Sewell Street, Lot 1? 369 Holden
Elliot.
Street? Sorry?
I'm sorry, Elliot. You do have 18 Quail Hollow Drive?
We did continue that one to our next
Okay.
meeting. David got in touch with me this
Okay.
afternoon.
Okay, all right. I was just staying on just to make sure. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, have a good night.
So, yeah, 369 Holden, 36 Sewell, 197 Spring.
197 Spring Street. And then I think the rest we.
We addressed everything else, yes.
Yep. Okay, not hearing anyone.
all right, moving on. Certificates of compliance?
Okey doke. So I still not, I have 11 Sunset Lane. I have not received the NOI for that. That was, oh God, I can't remember if it came before us last month, but they had requested a certificate of compliance, but they have done work, on the property that was not permitted, so they will be submitting an NOI. And I'd like to receive that NOI before we close this out.
Okay.
197 Spring Street, was the construction of the home. They also constructed the chicken coop. The RDA is supposed to resolve that, but since it was kind of opened but not talked about this evening, we can just leave it open. And then we have 198 South Quinsigamond and 190 and 198, which is two orders of conditions were issued for the same project. One was for the demo. I'll let Bob speak to that.
Come on up, Bob.
But it sounds like the initial one, 285-1850, was for the demolition of the existing home, and then the 285-1903 was for the construction of the now existing home,
Gotcha.
but the construction of the proposed home. I'll leave it over to you.
Robert O'Neill, I was the land surveyor for the project. Joseph Graham, who's the engineer of record, is online. He can speak to any of the engineering questions. As Aaliyah just stated, we originally came in and got our approval to construct and rebuild the retaining wall that's at the water line at the rear of 198 South Quinsigamond Ave, and then two associated terrace walls that were structural in nature for retaining the slope so that Mr. Chaviero could demo the existing house that's there and construct his new house. We received our approvals for the initial part, and in the process of constructing the new house, Mr. Chaviero's contractor actually went into the property next door, the condominium project, and did a small area of grading in that area that was not part of our approval, which facilitated another filing, tying the two together. He's finally got everything completed. All the slopes are stabilized. The only thing that's slightly different, and it really doesn't affect anything, is he chose to do a ornamental wall encompassing the entire property and then tying that back into the two retaining walls that are at the rear of the property. And he did shift the driveway opening about 3 feet southerly to help accommodate coming out of the driveway. As you know, South Quinsigamond Ave at that point it's got a curve right there, and the sight distances are somewhat limited. He completed the installation of the pool and the patio associated to the pool. All the plantings are in. Everything's been hydroseeded. Grass is growing, with the exception of a small area just in front of the garage that's actually enclosed by the ornamental walls. It's been hydroseeded, but it hasn't germinated as of yet. The driveway is in binder, and the drainage structures are all in place. Mr. Graham is online. He can answer any questions regarding the engineering, and if there's any questions that I can answer regarding the survey and the location of the building, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
Aaliyah, have you looked at this?
I did not get a chance to go out to the site, but I did have a few questions, because it looked like the permitted, and you included this in your narrative, the permitted pool was, a fair bit smaller, and the patio space that was proposed. I know there had been discussion of permeable pavers being installed. Is that still true, and is it? So I guess I'll have that question
Actually,
first.
the pool is slightly smaller than what was originally proposed, but he did not use permeable pavers
Okay.
in that area.
Okay, so it sounds like there's, I think this is the proposed plan, whereas I think this was the pool. Let me see. Maybe I have a different one. I just added, a plan to the COC request, but it may not have showed up for you yet. It seemed like the pool had been planning to take up about half of the upper level of the rear yard, and now it was redirected, but maybe I'm incorrect in what I had been looking at.
No, you're correct.
Okay.
It's more elongated than it is square.
Okay, but it had been reduced in size.
Correct.
Okay, but the pavers had been proposed to be permeable. Wow, that's a tongue twister. And now they're impermeable.
Correct.
So that is an increase in impermeable space.
Yes.
Okay. So that might be a problem.
Okay. I'll let Mr. Graham address that.
Yep, good evening. Sorry, this is Joe Graham, the engineer on for this project. When talking to Reese as he was building his pool, we were able to pitch all of the associated patio towards his pool, just so we were able to gather, obviously, any we didn't want any of his pool water, affecting his lawn and cascading down out on the walls. So he adjusted his grading in order to make the low point of that area in the back on his as-built pool. So yes, there was a change in the total impervious area. And I'm trying to think, I'm looking at my letter. I don't think I actually quantified it, but I believe it was negligible in the fact that, as Bob O'Neill said previous, the size of the pool shrank in nature. So I can.
So yeah, I think prior to the issuance of a certificate of compliance, we'd need to see the difference in impermeable area, because it is a pretty well-developed site. There is a lot of impermeable surfaces going on, and I don't know if you've been in contact with our stormwater coordinator either about the change in impervious surface.
I don't believe we have, no.
Okay, you might have, this project might have come into being prior to the institution of our stormwater permits, but, so he might not have had, or this project might not have had one issued, but I would get in touch with him about any changes in impervious area, because that will affect the closing out of that permit if it exists, and also the rate at which he is, what is it, levied or something, for the amount of impervious area on the site.
I think this was before the stormwater.
This was before the stormwater? Okay.
It sounds
And
like.
I do have.
This was originally started in 2020.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure when the full-blown one went into effect. Yeah, in which case it kind of is a little more on the commission to absorb some of those stormwater responsibilities, because there wasn't a stormwater bylaw in effect at the time.
Well, if we can just confirm that.
Yeah.
And then next meeting, if you can confirm that with, is it Vincent?
Yeah.
In
So-
engineering.
It would be possible to close out 1850 tonight, but to just confirm everything is included in 1903, and, because it sounds like, I think 1903 encompassed a lot more of the construction and those changes with the neighbor. So yeah, we'll confirm, we should be able to close out 1850, but we'll keep 1903 open to check with Vincent and get those differences in how much impervious surface was approved with the order of conditions and how much is existing now. That'd be great.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I have one. Okie dokie.
Updates.
Updates. Finally on to my second sheet. Okay, so I have 3 updates for you. 3, 4, 3, 3. The first one is our Oak Island Conservation Land. This is conservation land owned by the Conservation Commission and the town of Shrewsbury, and it is Oak Island off the. It's in Flint Pond. It's off the in the southern edge of town. Let me see if I can pull up a map for that. And there, in recent years, there have been some issues arising on Oak Island with heavy use of it in the summertime as a place for people to congregate, and there have been issues with trash deposition there. I think a little bit of fire starting, and then the enforceability of the island or the peninsula, I guess, because, sorry, I'm scrolling and looking at the summertime, and I cannot see anything. There's and it has been difficult for police to enforce the area when it gets a little unruly. And it's kind of a rough who's in charge here situation, because it's technically conservation-owned land, but generally Parks and Recreation enforces conservation-owned land where recreation is occurring, but police is generally in charge of enforcement of things. So it can be difficult for who it gets passed to, and then how it. So I think multiple solutions have come forward for how to address it. One of the things that has been proposed for conservation to do is put out some signage, just saying, hey, these are the rules of this recreational space. No fire starting, no trash or litter deposition.
Overnight camping.
Yeah, no overnight camping,
There's issues with boaters.
Right, jet skis.
Going onto shore and doing some damage in that area, in that aspect too. In other words, they're just not passively going by. They're onshore, physically staying there and
Not using the ramp, you're saying? Not using the boat ramp?
they use the ramp, but then they congregate on the shore of Oak Island, and they're potentially causing erosion and different causes, camping, campfires, and cookouts, and different things like that.
So generally, there will be people who move, who park in the parking lot at the state-owned boat ramp and walk to the edge of the island, and then people with jet skis and other boating things can jet ski off of the ramp and come around the south side to the snout of the island.
So Diane probably received calls, but I received several calls on asking if we can do something with signage, and I spoke with Aaliyah, and perhaps we can come up with some type of wording and get some signs installed if the commission was receptive to that.
Yeah.
We could also, if you guys are interested, we could arrange a site visit to go, I guess, walk the edge of it and see where those kind of entrance points from the water are, and if there's anything that, plantings could be installed, or fencing, or something that would perhaps discourage aggressive
Is it
erosion.
occurring all day long, or is it just at night, late at night?
I would say it's during the day.
Okay.
I think in recent years, it's been a quantity of people thing, where there will be just a large density of people in a generally wooded and not populous area. So it's, that's been the concern, I guess.
Also some concerns about how fast the boating is.
Yes.
That the jet skis are just dangerous.
Well, that's that's an issue on the water.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're looking on Oak Island,
Right, exactly.
Yes.
so.
Well,
Does,
I was gonna ask, does this commission need to come up with proposed wording and then vote on it? Or,
I would say if we could just, if we'd like to go take a walk around and look at it, or if we would like to, I would say any wording that would be appropriate, I think could work. If the commission wants to come up with this wording, that's fine too, but I think,
Yeah, I think this was just an introduction to the issue,
Yep.
and an idea of going for a site visit. I can see if I can find any, I'm sure you've seen signage around in the world of, hey, don't do this here. So I can see if I can find some signage that has been used historically
Okay.
and is probably readily available for purchase. With our new permit funds.
Right.
And
But then also the question remains is, how is it enforced?
exactly, that might be a harder issue to address.
But maybe
But
the
I think the
signs
step that we
should
can.
reflect that.
Yeah, I think the step that the Conservation Commission has authority and control over would be signage saying, these are the things that are allowed and these are the things that are not. Please respect the area. 'Cause yeah, I don't, I don't think I should or can have the capability of enforcement.
Martha, do you have any questions on this?
No, I don't have any questions.
Jason?
No, none.
Well, as long as, if we can come up with a time to go take a walk, if the commission would like to go do that, that would be great.
Be good.
And then in the meantime, we'll come up with some wording, and talk with some people and see if we can't get some signs installed. Right?
Okay, so I will be in touch about those. And then 272 Spring Street and 440 Hartford Turnpike are very separate projects, but they're both trying to do the same thing. They had orders of conditions approved. They would both like to downsize the impervious surface or project scale on their lots. So 272 Spring Street is the construction of a residential home. I think they are just looking to shrink the house, and then they're also looking to decrease the amount of driveway that they had proposed. I don't know if I included the plans that they gave me in the drive, but I can add those. I didn't think an amended order would be the right step since they're downsizing, but if you guys think that's the right step, I'm
They
happy to.
should probably at
let
least
them
come in
know.
and see us with the new
Yes.
plan, right? And-
I noted that, at minimum, they should submit, as-built with the changes when they come for a COC and have a narrative including, like, these were the reductions that occurred or
Yeah,
are
because
proposed to occur.
Maybe it should be reflected in an amended order, because they are changing it, and
Right.
then we have it covered. What do they have to do for that?
For an amended order, they would, it can get very scaled very quickly. So they would post public notice and notify all of their abutters again. And then, yeah.
I think have it all documented, we probably should do that.
I mean, in theory, the amount of square footage could be reduced, but it's moving closer to a wetland or something like that, right? We can't just say that it's being reduced, so it's okay.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, they should come in.
That already came up once this evening.
Yeah. Why don't we have them come in? with
Okay,
an amended
would you
order?
like, with an amended order? Okay. Because I can have them come in themselves and speak to and present updated plans.
And that's for both 272 and 440 Hartford Turnpike?
Yes, they're both looking to reduce in scale.
Martha and Jason, are you okay with that?
Yeah, no, I'm completely fine with that.
Yeah, it's important to track it.
Okie dokie. That covers our construction updates. We are now on to enforcement. So we have 31, the homeowner of 31 Powell Drive here. This was, sorry, my brain is just totally turning off now. This was brought to my attention, trees had been removed adjacent to the wetland, and I think our homeowner can speak more to that.
Hi.
Good evening. Thank you, Commission.
What's your name?
My name is Srinivasan Ramkumar, and I'm from 31 Pal Drive. And I'm here for the violation letter that I received in December. So Yeah, so immediately behind my backyard, there is wetland. I moved into the house in 2016, and I actually have two kids. The older one is a 13-year-old, extremely obedient boy. Always follow the rules, no problem. Never a risk taker. He doesn't, and if he says something, he agrees to it. He abides by it. My second is a 5-year-old daughter, who is completely the opposite. She's a thrill seeker, a risk taker, and if we say something, she wants to prove us wrong, and she wants to do it her way, which we are trying to kind of adjust and make her understand. So back in July, August, in the summer, when I was working on the deck with my laptop, she was playing with the ball in the backyard, and everything was going fine when all of a sudden I saw that the ball had rolled into the wetland, and she was almost midway trying to fetch it herself. I immediately ran down, stopped her, and I educated her that she shouldn't be doing this because it's a risk. My concern was with her personality that she would try to do it again, just to prove me wrong. And that was my biggest fear. So I was wanting to kind of put a fence to separate my backyard from the wetland. Full honesty, I knew that I need to pull a permit for a fence, or if I'm doing any grading or changing the landscape, etc. But I wasn't aware that I need to pull a permit to take the trees down. Unfortunately, the 3 or 4 contractors whom I had called to give me the quotation, none of them told me or educated me either that I need to pull a permit for it. So the first step I was thinking was to take the trees along the separation or the border between the backyard and the wetland. Then in spring, come to the commission seeking permit for grading the backyard, removing the debris that currently is there, pull a permit for the fence, etc. But I did go ahead, and full honesty, I apologize. It was a sincere mistake on my part, a lapse of not knowing, and I acknowledge that. And in September, some of the trees along the border between my backyard and the wetland were taken out. But nothing from that was put into the wetland. Everything, every leaf, every tree, every trunk, the sticks, everything was hauled away by the contractors. So we did not pollute the wetland at all. And yeah, that's my side of what happened. So I did this, I think, in September, and in December is when I got this letter saying that I violated it, and I just didn't know. Otherwise, I had like 2 months where if I had not realized that this is something, I would have immediately come to the commission, apologized for what I had already done, and requested for approval of a permit, or do something to correct myself, not come to this stage where I had to receive the violation notice and sit in front of you. So I'm sorry about that.
So you probably have to file for a notice.
Notice of intent?
Yeah.
Okay.
To show what was done and what needs to be done to mitigate what needs to be restored. And if you want to put up a fence, and if you want to do something like that, show that on a plan.
Do all that then.
And whatever you want to do to clean it up, and we'll move on. Okay?
Okay.
So if you file your notice with Alea, and she will tell you what you need to do and what papers you need to fill out, and you may have to hire an engineer of some sort or a wetlands person to help you with that.
Okay.
And include how many trees you cut down and whether or not you left stumps and things like that, because otherwise we'll just ask you those details anyway. So
yeah.
I appreciate that you're trying to set up a barrier between the property and the wetland, because we're constantly telling people to not go into the wetlands, so it's perfect.
Sure, yeah, the stumps are still there. I didn't take them out. And, yeah, and there's no bifurcation between the backyard and the wetland. It's like pretty much like an extension, a smooth, easily accessible. And since 2016, I never had any concerns with that up until that incident happened, which kind of made me react and take some steps which was not ethical, which I know now, which I didn't know at that time, and I apologize for that. And I will definitely be connecting with Elia to know how I need to be proceeding next, plus what I need to do to correct what has already happened.
Perfect. Oh,
Yeah, so my recommended next step had been a filing that would kind of incorporate the next several years of proposed projects. So obviously the tree removal and then the fence construction and anything else that he was thinking of doing could just kind of get rolled into a
Very good.
one nice little application.
Okay. You have any questions?
No, no. Except that I have 2 kids too, and they're very different. So.
Martha?
I have an anecdotal story about a particular kind of salamander that has been found in the vicinity of Powell Drive, and it makes me wonder if that wetland is a breeding spot for them. So I would, fences are fine, as long as they permit, keep balls and kids out of wetlands, or at least keep the balls out of the wetlands. But allow for salamanders and turtles to get through.
So maybe a couple inches off the ground or something?
Maybe a couple inches off the ground, yeah.
Okay.
You all set?
Yes, thank you.
Jason?
I'm all set.
Okay. All right.
Okey-doke.
Thank
So
you.
I'll send you a follow-up email of all the required materials for that submission.
Sure.
And our next couple of deadlines. Yeah, of course. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Our next project is 248 Spring Street. You guys had issued please show me the address, thank you. An order of conditions, or actually you guys had denied an order of conditions for this property. It went to DEP and was approved at that level for construction, because construction was proposed approximately 8 feet from the wetland. Let me see if I can find a better photo. Please. Okay, so the final approved construction by DEP was what you can see on screen. The house is here with an arborvitae kind of line to delineate the edge of the lawn area, as we usually permit, and then no further encroachment on the wetland. To date, so I believe, yep. So where this kind of red line in the middle of the project is where that arborvitae line was, and now there is clearly further disturbance towards the area of the wetland. So previously, about 8, according to the order of conditions, there was going to be about 8 feet from disturbed area to wetland. So this is probably more than 8 feet, but they might be well into wetland.
So are you saying that
It got
more
worse.
vegetation was taken down?
It looks like it. So yeah, you can see the image on the left is from March of 2022. And you can see the natural kind of vegetation line beyond those arborvitaes. And then let me scroll to on the right. The image on the right now overtaking the screen is from March of 2023. So it does look like more. I'm not sure what that material is. It might be a pea stone or it might be a pave. I don't know. I haven't been out to the site yet to take a look. But it's clearly disturbed area.
Have they responded to you?
They did say they were going to be here tonight, but I'm not seeing them here tonight.
Maybe just send them another email saying they need to file a notice of intent and
Yeah.
tell
So
us how
they
they're gonna
also
do it.
received just generally my first step is to send a notification of enforcement of like, hey, you've done a wrong thing. This is not an enforcement order, but further enforcement action may be necessary if you don't hit me up. They did respond, and they had said they would be here tonight, but yeah, either an actual enforcement order can be issued, or just another notification that, hey, please come to see us.
You send them in, either way, but if, I can see why they maybe didn't come tonight, but,
Yeah.
I mean, at least if you
Yeah,
follow up with
it
an
was
email and
difficult to
asking
know.
them, they need to come in and see us, and they need to take care of this.
Unless they're online now, I don't.
Let me see if anybody is still hanging out with us. I'm not seeing anybody hanging out with us, just us.
I remember the site visit for this one. It was incredibly close to the wetlands.
Yep.
And
It
it
seemed
was
like it.
absolutely for this reason that we didn't want it to be so close.
Yeah.
We have one more?
And then one last enforcement, we had, we recently issued an order of conditions for 7 Flanagan Drive. They've had significant, I don't know if I uploaded photos. Let me just stop sharing for a moment. That was for the construction of a residential property adjacent to a river on Flanagan Drive. They have 4 homes currently going up, 7, 9, 11, and 15. 7 was the only one within the riverfront area. That was, it is currently classified as perennial river, so it's within the 200 feet. It's a pretty significant grade drop on site, so it's, I think it's been difficult for them to meet those grades without going over the erosion control, but they've had several erosion control issues where the slope is, what's it called when it avalanches, but not
Just
Subside?
collapse.
subsides. That's the fancy word. The slope has subsided and is kind of has knocked over the erosion control or gone over the erosion control in a couple areas. They also just have had construction, like litter and debris kind of around the slope of the site, and then also heading into the wetland area. Stormwater has issued violation notices, and they are taking steps to meet these things, but
You should send them an enforcement order, tell them to take action on cleaning up the wetlands and stabilizing the slope immediately.
yeah. And then I also just wanted to note that they've been having some, with all of that dirt on site, the most recent upload for their building permits has been for more retaining walls on site, and those had been removed in the order of conditions that was approved because they significantly kind of increased the amount of fund space, I guess. It graded out and flattened the
So
rear yard.
they changed what they were doing on,
I let them know that they did not have those retaining walls approved, and they're still in the process of deciding if they would like to amend to
they need to stop,
have
they
those.
can't put them in.
No, exactly. They have not put them in
Alright.
yet, and I've let them know. I wanted to keep you guys updated on what is occurring. But I have let them know that the retaining walls proposed in the order of conditions are what need to go in, or they need to amend.
And they need
If
to-
they need more, and building has noticed that they may need more retaining walls just to stabilize the site enough for the house to stay where it is. But then they'll just need an amended order of conditions.
Yeah, they need to, you can issue that enforcement order, they need to stabilize the site immediately and clean it up.
Yeah.
And they should come in and see us and tell us how they're gonna, what they did and how they're gonna do it, maintain that.
Mhm.
So they should be at our next meeting, but in the meantime, they should stabilize the site and clean it up.
It's extremely steep, and it's really far. It's at least 10, 15 feet straight down.
Mhm.
And it's just amazingly steep.
Yeah.
And muddy.
Martha, do you have any questions?
No.
Jason?
None.
Okey dokey. So let me have you guys sign some things and issue some things. So I will give you the certificate of compliance I have to sign. I don't know if anyone would like to make a motion for the, is it two? I have the one
Lost track.
RDA and the one order of conditions.
I lost track which ones we, let's see, we issued negative determinations on 2 RDAs, right?
Yep.
Yes.
So that's all set.
We already did that.
Yep, so Eagle Head Terrace.
That's certificate of compliance too.
Yes, there was just one certificate of compliance for 285-1850, the original filing for 198 South Quinsigamond.
Oh, it doesn't work. There you go. You broke my pen? That was brand new.
Enforcement order for zoning plan
Oh,
again?
it's working now.
What? Do you need a pen?
No, we have one. So you're gonna make a motion for, somebody gonna make a motion for Eagle Head Terrace?
Which one?
Eagle Head Terrace?
Construction of a pool deck?
Order,
I will as soon as I see it.
Second page, 4 up from the new and old business.
What was that, Martha?
Second page of the agenda,
Yes.
4 up from the new and old business.
would you like to make a motion?
Yes.
I would, but I can't remember the conditions.
I don't think there were any special
There was-
conditions for this one.
Yeah, I don't think we had any.
No.
There weren't.
So I make a motion that we issue an order of conditions for the repair and replacement of a pool deck and patio at 7 to 27 Eagle Head Terrace.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we're gonna take a vote. Diane?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Martha?
Aye.
Jason?
Aye.
And I. Okay. And then we need, was there one, that was the only one, right?
Yeah, because we did the other two RDAs earlier.
Yeah.
That was it?
And then for the RDAs, I had a special condition at 316. Oh, to confirm if soil borings were gonna be required for the depth of the holes. And then for 107 Francis Ave was to meet on site and get some photos of the tree being removed to confirm that it was okay to come down.
Right. Removing a poplar, trimming an elm.
Yes.
All right. Is that it?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor? Diane?
Aye.
Aye.
Chris? Aye. Martha?
Aye.
Jason?
Aye.
Myself? Aye. Good night.
Good night.